Okay, so I just wanted to do a little demo here of the still life. Actually, I guess I better take a photo. The angle I'm drawing. All right, that is my angle. Now I am drawing from life, so it's gonna maybe look a little bit different from the reference, but okay. So I'm actually not gonna look at this photo. I'm just using the photo so that you guys can see what I'm drawing. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is use a colored pencil, something a little bit light, just so that I can map in everything. And right off the bat, step number one is placement. So I'm going to look at the overall, just gonna lighten that. It's a good idea to draw really lightly here. I'm gonna look at the overall shape I have. I'm not really paying attention to structure right now. I'm just sort of blocking in where I want everything to go. So I'm drawing on the computer just so you guys can see it. But if I was drawing on iPad, or sorry, if I wasn't drawing on the iPad, I would just be drawing lightly, lighter than this. Okay, now I'm gonna even turn that down even more and just make sure, yeah, my general placement of everything looks fine. Alrighty, here we go. So just so you guys can see better, I'm going to draw with a different color. And I'm just gonna start roughing things in. So the first sort of thing I see for me is that corner. Right off the bat, I can tell that the perspective I'm drawing from is slightly different from the photo. I don't quite see as much into the box as the iPad did when I held it up. I guess I held it up above my head. So I'm blocking in the basic structure. I'm not thinking much about my vanishing points and horizon. I mean, I know that my horizon is my eye level, or in this case, the iPad's camera level. And I know that this is generally a 2-point perspective scene because I have, I'm seeing the corner here, and I have vanishing points on this side and vanishing points on this side, but I'm mostly drawing from observation here. So just making sure I draw the whole box all the way through, double checking. And again, if I were drawing with a pencil, I'd be drawing even lighter so that I can make changes here. So I started with the box just because it's the biggest thing in the picture for me. And just blocking in everything. Now I might just quickly place some objects. We've got a skull over here. We've got the box, and I can tell right away I want some more space to draw. And that's why I would draw so lightly, just so you can shrink or expand your drawing if you need to. So I'm gonna give myself a little bit more space. Okay, there's the cup over here. There's another cup. I can see it just over here behind, and then there's the glass bottle. And then we've got those basic shapes starting with the cylinder. So if it looks a little different, I'm just seeing something a little different than what you see in the photo there. My perspective not exactly the same. Sketching in the box. And so I know when you're starting out with this, you can kind of get bogged down by trying to draw everything correctly. And what I would say is it's a good idea to just get it all down and then worry about drawing it correctly so that you have just a generally pretty good, something to work from. Okay, so there's my quick drawing. Now again, I would do the exact same thing I'm doing here with a pencil. I would just lighten everything up with a kneadable eraser. And I am just gonna shrink this a little bit, which is one of the benefits of digital, but you can do that with pencil too. If you work small, you can erase it. And I don't really need my little rough end. So again, starting with the first part, that was just my block in, placing everything. Number two, now this is just my rough end. I'm not really thinking too technically yet. So don't worry about drawing everything perfectly. Just get it all down and then you can start to work with it. All right, I'm gonna change my color just so everybody can see the separation. Let's do some purple here. Actually, I'm gonna go something more organic, maybe brown. Okay, so now this is where I'm gonna actually try to draw better, more accurately. And the reason I do that later rather than at the beginning is now I have information to work with. I can fix things, I can make it better. And so I can tell if I'm, off or anything like that. So I'm gonna start at the back and I'm gonna try to be fairly detail oriented here. Figure out my dimensions and try to, once I have something consistent, I'll go from there. So I'm gonna look at the footprint of the box. The footprint of the box, and I'm taking it right back somewhere up to my vanishing point. Now I can tell that my horizon, obviously the camera is below that box, but I might actually look at that now because it's gonna help me sort of clarify. My horizon is somewhere, whoops. Oh no, I don't know where that reference was. There it is. My horizon is somewhere in between, somewhere in here. Oh, I keep going over there. Sorry about that. Somewhere in between, somewhere in here. And I'm just keeping that in mind. I'm not going to draw everything perfectly to the vanishing points. And the reason is that they're probably not on the paper. So they're probably off the paper. All right. And I like to check my dimensions. So I'm just going to check the height of this box and see if it makes sense to me. Okay, does it look a little big? Yeah, I think it's a little too tall, a little bit too warped in perspective. Okay, now I'm going to sketch in the base here. And there is my basic building block. From there, I might put in a grid. Not a really fancy grid, but just basically using the lines I drew for the box. And I'll find them for the base here. Maybe I'll even sketch in the base, the full footprint of the box. If I could see it. I think it might be right around there. Okay, so I'm gonna take those lines and just continue them out. And that's just gonna give me the table, like the depth of the table. And I'm assuming that I'm not perfect here. So again, don't aim for perfection, build towards perfection. Sort of keep modifying your picture, trying to get closer and closer. So this is my little grid, and I'm again just using the lines of the box to set that up. It's gonna help me figure out where things should be. All right, from there, so now I have my box, I'm gonna start working my way out. And a really good way to do that is to just find spots on the floor, or on the table in this case, come out and say, okay, my apple, the base of my apple maybe is here. That's what that dot is. And then I'm gonna just sketch in the basic kind of simple shape I'm seeing. I'm not gonna get into the three-dimensional form. I'm still in the placement stage with some of these things. I'm just replacing. I'm gonna block in that handle quickly. Just finding where it is. And always checking things. Is my apple the right size compared to whatever else? All right, let's do the top. Now you could just sketch in there and make sure it makes sense that your top isn't too tall. Now in perspective, it might be a little different, but that's what I did with that arc. Okay, and now I'm gonna sketch in the rest of the lid. There we go. Okay. So you'll notice I really didn't get too into detail. I might turn my underdrawing back up just a little bit so you can see, I did all rough all that in. Now let's go over here and figure out some other things. So we did talk about finding the middle of a box with an X, you go from corner to corner, and that might give you just the basic placement of that latch. And then from here, again, just like I did here, coming out on the floor, that's what that grid does. Coming out and over, that's where that cup is. I'm gonna start by drawing the cup right as if it's contacting the table so that it really looks like it's contacting the table. Because if you don't, it might look like it's on a different angle. And then I'm going to look in there. And I'm sketching basically how I see the cup. But I'm thinking of it as a slightly wider cylinder. Again, I'm not going to be too fancy here. I'm not going to get that handle perfect right now. I'm not going to get the tapering of the cup right now. Now, that cup is way too small. And that's why I'm trying to say I don't want to be too fancy here, because you still have to check and make sure everything's the right size. You don't want to draw something really well the wrong size or in the wrong place. So that looks a little better. My view is a little different than that reference, but that's okay. All right, even this back cup, I'm going to draw it by coming over and sort of finding out where it should be. I think my overall box is a little tall, but that cup I think is about there on the table. Maybe a little bit too big. I also think this cup still needs to be bigger. Glad I didn't spend too much time on that. Okay, that is maybe my placement of that back cup. Now we have the bottle. So the cup is here and the bottle is right behind it. So I'm drawing again on the ground as if everything was made of glass. And I'm going to sketch out that water or oil bottle or whatever it is. And I'm starting by simple shapes, so cylinders. And then again, I'm not trying to be too perfect with it. I will get into that later. That's my block in. Okay, and just getting the lid. Now I'm also checking negative shape. I'm just going to change my color so I can show you what I mean. I'm constantly trying to check what is the shape here between, maybe between here and here, right? This is all negative space around here. You can even just color it in if you want to, lightly. Now I can tell I'm pretty off here, and that's because I'm checking my negative space. I can see that there is a space here between this, so I think I have to just slightly move my lid back. Now I actually can see I have quite a big difference from the reference photo from you guys in what I'm seeing in reality, which is I don't see that cone in this space. It's over a little bit for me, so keep that in mind there. So that's my negative space. I'm being careful with negative space. And right up here in my negative space, no, lower, right up here in my negative space is that cylinder. So finding that cylinder, I can't see the base, but I'm drawing down and making sure I can kind of find where it is. Now, again, you can kind of go along the floor there and find where you think that cone is. That cone for me is sort of awkwardly right here. I'm gonna maybe adjust it, and that's where creative license comes in. You can adjust things. I'm gonna move it just a bit because it's kind of, for me, intersecting a few things, kind of awkward. I'm just adjusting it a little bit over, and that gives me a nice negative shape here. When I say nice negative shape, I mean clear. It's not sort of muddled by everything being stacked on top. And I gotta move this up higher, 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 quite a bit higher. All right, that's better. So I'm always working with my design, changing it. Alrighty, now let's get into some of these boxes. So I intentionally arranged everything to be laid out in a similar perspective. So you don't have these boxes going in different directions. They're in the same direction as the box, the big box. So that was intentional just to make it a little easier, but I did offset them. So yeah, this just needs to come out a bit more. So again, just constantly checking, never being satisfied with your drawing, never saying, yeah, I got that. Well, maybe someday, like what I mean by someday, some point in the drawing, But for now, you don't want to be assuming you're right. You want to assume you're wrong and keep checking. Okay. There we go. So this is my rough. It's coming together. Still noticing new things. Still improving my layout. My apple. There's a little glass jug back here. I'm going to sketch under it to find. I might not draw right through. And this skull, I set up the still life to be good for everybody from different points of view. So this skull, I don't know how much we're really going to see in there. So that is my finished structural lay-in. Now, if I was painting like watercolor or something, I don't know if I would go much further than this. But because we're going to draw it, I'm going to do the same thing I would do again, is just get my kneadable eraser out and lighten it all up. So lighten it all up and get ready for the next stage. Get out your darker pencil and maybe get it a little bit sharper. So I'm going to turn the size of my pencil down. Excuse me. And now I'm just going to find a place to start and get to refining again. So I'm going to pick a spot, and I think I'm going to pick this corner of the box. Right in there. And I'm going to just start. I'm not going to do crazy detail yet. I'm just going to basically start checking again, making sure everything's good, getting a little bit better. A little bit better every time. So I might actually indicate that this box is made of little pieces of wood. There's depth to that wood. And I'm not opposed to changing things. Now here's where I'm going to start to kind of draw the way I'm seeing it. What I mean by that is I'm not going to draw through as much. I'm going to be more focused on starting to get my overlaps. So for example, this apple, it's in front of the box. So I'm not going to spend too much time drawing through the box there. I'm going to just start to block in the apple. And looking for some simple contours. I might add a little stem in there. Don't have to be a slave to what you're seeing. You can change it a bit. I'm gonna just adjust this a little bit. I can tell that this glass jug container is a little bit below there. And you could really go to town constructing that because it is pretty interesting. But I think I'm going to just quickly sort of block it in because it's in the background. It's kind of like if you're drawing trees in a background, you could go crazy with them. I'm just going to indicate it. And I might not even put the skull in there, but I am going to indicate some flats that just help me establish the table, maybe even some verticals. Yeah, I think I'm going to remove that skull and just sort of push this back here. I'm not thinking about shading, and really this class, like we are going to get into shading, but right now for today, we're just thinking about structure, 2-point perspective, that kind of stuff. Okay, so I just pushed, so what I did there is by putting verticals, that goes back to that lesson on language of line, right? I'm just saying that there's something behind that stuff. That's all I'm trying to say there. Now, in terms of shadow, I'm not going to do light and shadow, but I might just sort of indicate again that there is some shadow. And what I mean by that, I'm not going to draw it carefully, but I'm just saying that those are contacting the ground. So because of that, there's some shadow there. Okay, now back into cleanup. So I'm just continuing to work around, finding in here, we've got the lid, sketching that lid in. coming up here. And that piece is, again, two pieces. It's got thickness, that piece of wood, and it's got a little bit of a rounded corner. I'm adding the depth to that top, coming down and finding that cone. Now that cone is not really a cone. It's been dropped 100 times by me, and it drops right on that point. So you could use it just to show that not perfect. Okay. All right, now the wooden cylinder, getting in there, building it around. And again, this has thickness, so I might add a little bit of thickness to it. Maybe sketch a little bit inside just to say that it's inside. And for me, I know it's not necessarily the same in that reference, but I can see this box in front. Now again, this box isn't perfect, so use that as an excuse to practice. It's gonna lighten up that coming through there. Use that box not being perfect to practice studying that kind of stuff. This corner is dented and kind of rounds out into this corner. And again, it kind of dented in here and quite dented at the back. Those little details when you're drawing buildings or objects, just make them more real, more lived in. The object has had a life. Okay, I'm going to start to block in this center front line here. This box has tape on it that shows you the center. You could also do these little lines. I'll show you what I'm doing there. I'm thinking about down and up, like the top and the front. I'm just sort of indicating something like that, or down and then like that. Now I can tell my proportions are off on this box, so I've got to go through and figure out why, and I think it's just, it needs to come out a little bit this way. Okay, here we go. All right, so got our box and our cylinder, our cone. Now let's get into the other side of that box, which again has some thickness, like that. Okay, I'm going to sketch this in here. I know this is a long demo. If you want to speed through this, more power to you. I don't expect you to listen to me the whole time, but I just figure if you can, that's pretty wobbly, if you can decide for yourself, but you can kind of see what I would do here. I really am not a fan of sketching digitally. I'm just doing it because it's great for teaching. You can see exactly what I'm drawing. My hand isn't in the way. Okay, I'm going to turn my other drawings down a little bit just so I can see what needs to be built up here. All right, now getting into some of these other objects. Again, I'm looking at my underdrawing, but I'm also looking at what I see in real life, and I'm constantly correcting it. And I can tell right now I'm off. I can tell I'm quite off. It should be over here. Now in your reference photo, it is back there, so maybe I'll just throw it in there, but in reality, mine still, it's a little bit to the other side for me. Okay, here's a tangent I don't really like. I don't like that this, and this all meet. So it draws attention. So I'm gonna move the bottle over to there. And then another little trick to avoid a tangent like that is to not let those lines touch. So you're sketching and you don't quite let them touch. All right, now coming in and looking at this. Now this structure I know I have to be careful with, because if I'm too organic with it, it's really gonna look wobbly, and it's not. It's a perfect kind of formed glass. So I just gotta take my time, make sure everything lines up. And I can't quite draw with the same control I want to on this slippery glass tablet, but with a pencil, you've got that feedback. So I'm noticing tapers and bringing the bottle in, and it's gonna hit this point and then it sort of rounds. And that's too overt of a round, but it does round, right? And again, today we're not really doing light and shadow, so don't get bogged down by that. And looking at that structured round, coming in. I don't have too much more time because I'm just doing this before class starts. Everybody's gonna arrive soon. So you guys will be here soon for people that are coming to class today. And that's a little bit too big maybe. So I might not be able to totally go crazy here, but in perspective, that lid, this side of the bracket and this side, they line up. And then there's that snap ring, and then it comes up, and you've got a cylinder, and another cylinder, another cylinder. There is a logo on there. It's kind of fun because it's a circle, and it says some details. So I think I hear people coming in, so I might have to stop, but you guys will, if you can practice this more at home, doesn't have to be this one, then that would be great. All right. Here we go.